Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. The hallway at Riverside High was buzzing with ringing bells, lockers slamming, laughter. Alex Carter, a thin guy with dark hair, stood at his locker, trying to stuff a physics textbook into his backpack. He was already late for class when a hail of books fell on him from above. One hit him right in the back of the head. Crap, he burst out, and he grabbed his head, dropping his backpack. Melanie Davis, a cheerleader with brown curls and a short cheerleading skirt, appeared above him. Her green eyes sparkled, and her smile was apologetic, but not too much. "Oh, sorry, Carter," she said, bending over to pick up a fallen literature textbook. "It's accidental." Accidentally, he squinted, rubbing the back of his head. "Third time in a week by chance?" She straightened up, holding the book, and laughed loudly, as if someone had shaken a bell. "Maybe this is a sign," she winked. "A sign that I need a helmet," he muttered, but the corners of his lips twitched. "Or that you don't hold things well." "Oh, come on, don't grumble." She poked his finger in the chest. "I apologized." Alex looked at her disheveled hair, at the freckles that she hated, but which he liked. They'd been in the same class for 2 years, but up until that point, she'd just been the loud cheerleader, and he'd been the quiet guy who fixed projectors for the teachers. Something about her laugh made his heart skip a beat. "Okay, I forgive you," he said, picking up his backpack. "But next time, aim better." "Agreed," she grinned. "You're such an easy target." He snorted, and so it began. Riverside High, in the Austin suburbs, was a small little world. Everyone knew each other, but Melanie and Alex lived in different orbits. She hung out with the cheerleaders and football players, he with the textbooks and a couple of the same nerds. But after that incident, she began to catch his eye more often. Either she would accidentally sit next to you in the dining room or ask how to solve a problem, although she clearly knew the answer. A week later, he made up his mind. After her training, they sat in the stands of the football field. She drank water, wiping sweat from her forehead, and he fiddled with the laces of his sneakers. "Listen, Mel," he began, looking at the field. "You don't just drop books on me, right?" She choked, coughed, and looked at him with feigned indignation. "Do you seriously think that I did this on purpose?" "Well, you're a cheerleader," he shrugged. "Everything is choreographed there." "Wow, Carter, you're a comedian." She poked him in the shoulder. "Okay, let's say I wanted you to notice me." "And what?" "And what I noticed," he finally turned to her. "Maybe we can go somewhere." Melanie smiled, not the usual smile for everyone, but a real one, which made dimples appear on her cheeks. "I was already thinking that I needed to hit you with something harder so that you would understand the hint," she said. He laughed and, "Please, I've already had 3 concussions this week. I'm afraid I won't survive." The first date was at Tony's Pizzeria, a cheap place with sticky tables and a neon sign. Melanie ordered a pineapple pizza, and Alex looked at her in horror. "Is this serious?" he asked, poking a piece of food with a fork. "Pineapples on pizza. Don't whine, try it." She pushed the plate towards him. "Or are you one of those who are afraid of new things?" "I'm not afraid, I just respect pizza." He took a bite and grimaced. "This is a crime." "You're just boring," she laughed, taking the piece back. "But now I know how to piss you off." They chatted until closing time, until Tony started shooting them out, jingling his keys. On the street, she suddenly said, "You are not what I thought." "How is that?" He put his hands in his pockets. "Well, I thought you were boring," she shrugged. "And you are cool." "Thank you for not being a nerd," he grinned. "And you're not that arrogant." "Oh, thanks," she nudged him with her elbow. Deserved another date. By graduation, they were already inseparable. May 2008, school ball. Melanie in a blue dress that she spent 3 hours choosing with her mother, Alex in a tuxedo that pinched under the arms. They danced to Gwen Stefani's Sweet Escape, and she whispered in his ear, "You won't leave me after school, right? Just please, if you want to say something, say it directly. Don't drop everything you have at hand on me," he answered, pulling her closer. "I'm serious, Alex." She stopped, looking into his eyes. "We'll be together, won't we?" He nodded, feeling her words hit him right in the chest. "I swear, Mel, you and me, always." She pressed herself against him, and in that moment he believed it was true. After the dance, they ran to the parking lot, sat on the hood of his car, and looked at the stars. "I want my own business," she said, throwing her head back. "Marketing or advertising. Something cool." "And I want to build," he answered. "Bridges, houses, whatever." "Then we agree," she turned to him. "You build, I promote." "He's coming." He extended his hand, and she shook it like a business partner. "And the children?" she suddenly asked, narrowing her eyes slyly. "What kind of children?" He was confused. "Well, how many will there be?" She poked him in the side. "2, 3. "Mel, we're 17, he laughed. "Let's do it first." "Okay, but I want a girl." She raised a finger. "And a boy." "And a dog." I wrote it down. He tapped his temple. "Girl, boy, dog." "What else?" "A house with a veranda," she added. "And so that you fix everything that I break." "I can do that," he nodded. "Will you cook?" "Only if you survive my toast," she giggled. They chatted until her mom called screaming, "Melanie Davis, come home." Alex drove her home, and at the porch she quickly kissed him on the cheek. "Don't forget about the dog, Carter," she said, running away. He looked after her, and there was warmth in his chest. The summer passed in endless meetings. She dragged him to the lake. He taught her to swim and crawl, although I floundered and laughed more. "You're a terrible teacher," she said, crawling ashore. "You're a terrible student," he retorted, throwing her a towel. One evening, sitting by the water, she said, "You know, I really believe in us." "Me too, Mel." He squeezed her hand. "We can handle it." She nodded, and there was promise in her eyes. A school promise they both intended to keep. Melanie Davis sat at the kitchen table in her parents' house, surrounded by notebooks and envelopes. Her brown hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and in front of her lay a letter, her fifth one that week. She chewed on the tip of her pen, staring at the blank page. "So what will I write to him?" she muttered, tapping her foot on the floor. "Hey, Alex, everything is boring here, and you're probably shooting at targets there?" The door slammed, and her mother, Linda, came rushing into the kitchen with grocery bags. "Melanie, are you writing to your soldier again?" Linda put her bags on the table, emptying out cans of soup and a packet of cookies. "Have you even eaten today?" "Mom, I'm not hungry." Melanie waved it off, not looking up from the sheet. "And he is not my little soldier, but Alex. You know him." I know," Linda rolled her eyes. "The guy who fixed our toaster when you broke it." "It was an accident." Melanie pointed her hand in the air. "And he joined the army to pay for college, not because he likes toasters." Linda snorted, but her gaze softened. "Okay, write already, otherwise he will think that you have forgotten him." Melanie sighed and began, "Dear Alex, everything is the same here. Mom burned the pie again, Dad is fixing the lawnmower, and I'm thinking about you. You hang in there, okay? Don't be too heroic." She smiled, imagining him reading it somewhere in a Georgia barracks. Alex joined the army a month after graduation. The decision was sudden. He simply came to her house and said, "Mel, I signed up." "Where?" She then stood on the porch, holding a glass of lemonade. "To the army." He put his hands in his pockets. "2 years, but college will be paid for. I can study to become an engineer." She almost dropped the glass. "Are you serious?" Her voice trembled. "What about us?" "We can handle it." He stepped closer. "You said to yourself that you believe in us." "Yes, but I didn't think you'd go so far and for so long." She put the glass on the railing. "What if they send you somewhere dangerous?" "They won't send me away." He took her hand. "This is a base in Georgia, training. I'll be back, Mel." She looked at him, at his serious brown eyes, at the stubborn crease between his eyebrows, and nodded. "Okay, But you will write to me every day. I don't promise every day, he smiled, but I'll try. No, Carter, every day, she poked him in the chest. Or I'll come there and give you a dressing down. He laughed, and they agreed. He left a week later, and she stayed in Austin, enrolling in marketing at a local college, and the letters began. Every day she sat down at the table and wrote. Sometimes they were long stories about classes, about how she spilled coffee during lectures, about her new friend Caitlin, who always got into stories. Sometimes short notes. Are you alive there? Write already. She sent them to the Fort Benning base, and within a week the answers came. Mel, it's hot as hell in here, Alex wrote. We marched 5 miles today. I almost died. You definitely would have outpaced me. You're a cheerleader. Or, your letter about the pie arrived while we were eating some kind of junk food from the canteen. I almost cried with envy. She kept his letters in a box under her bed. By the end of the first year, there were more than 100 of them. Her father, Bill, once caught her reading and muttered, "Does this guy even know that you're hanging out here?" "I'm not dry, Dad," she rolled her eyes. "I'm waiting." "Yeah, you're waiting," he chuckled. "Just don't forget to live your life." But Melanie did not forget. She studied, worked part-time in a cafe, dated Caitlin, who dragged her to parties. One day, after another get-together, Caitlin said, "Look, Mel, he's great, but are you sure you're not wasting your time?" "I'm sure," Melanie snapped, looking at the stars. "He will return." A year has passed. Then 1.5. Letters came less frequently. Alex wrote that they were being pushed around during exercises and that there was almost no time. But he still found a moment to write, "Mel, I'm counting the days. 180 left." She answered, "Don't relax there, Carter. I'm training here to beat you on the run." And then the day came. June 2010. Melanie stood at the Austin train station, clutching a homemade poster. She spent half the night drawing it with felt tip pens, huge letters, "Welcome home." Caitlin giggled next to her, straightening her hair. "You look like a schoolgirl," she teased. "Poster, seriously." "Shut up, Kate," Melanie elbowed her. "This is important." The train arrived, and the crowd poured onto the platform. Melanie craned her neck, her heart pounding. And then she saw him taller than she remembered, with short hair and a backpack slung over his shoulder. Alex Carter walked towards her, a smile slowly spreading across his face. "What is this for me?" He nodded at the poster, stopping 2 steps away. "No, for another soldier," she grinned, raising the poster higher. "Of course, for you, fool." He dropped his backpack and hugged her so tightly that she squeaked. "You're heavy, Carter." She laughed, but hugged him back. "And you're still just as petty." He pulled away, looking at her. "I missed you, Mel." "Me too," she sniffled, trying not to cry. Caitlin coughed next to him. "Hey, hi, hero," she waved. "I'm Caitlin. I've heard everything about you and even more." "Hi," Alex nodded to her. "Are you the one who spilled the wine at the party?" "She's the one," Caitlin giggled. "Melanie, he is aware of all your stories. This is love." "Shut up, Kate." Melanie rolled her eyes, but couldn't help but smile. They walked to her father's car, an old pickup truck that Bill had borrowed for the day. Alex threw his backpack into the back and sat down next to Melanie. They arrived at her house, and Bill stepped out onto the porch with his arms crossed. "Carter," he nodded. "You've grown up," he said, smiling. "Thank you, sir." Alex shook his hand. "Glad to be back." In the evening, they sat in the backyard, drinking lemonade and chatting. Melanie looked at him, at his new wrinkles around his eyes, at how he became broader in his shoulders. "You won't leave again, will you?" she asked when it got dark. "No, Mel." He squeezed her hand. "I'm home. With you." She nodded, and warmth spread in her chest. The long wait is over. Melanie was sitting on the sofa in their rented apartment, a tiny one-room apartment in Austin with threadbare carpet and a creaky bed. There was a laptop on my lap, the screen glowing with a table of numbers. She rubbed her temples, looking at the line, "Office rent $1,200. "Alex, I'll do it," she said, without taking her eyes off the screen. I will open my own agency. But damn it, where will the money come from? Alex stood at the stove, stirring pasta in a pan. He returned from the army 6 months ago, in December 2010, and was now studying to become an engineer at the University of Texas, working part-time at a construction company. His dark hair was disheveled, and his t-shirt smelled of sweat from his shift. You'll succeed, Mel. He looked over his shoulder. You always wanted your own business. Wanting and doing are two different things. She slammed the laptop. I need an office, equipment, and clients. And we have on our account. How much? $200. 230, he clarified, turning off the stove. Plus my salary in a week. She snorted, leaning back on the couch. Oh yeah, your $50 for carrying boards will definitely save the day. Hey, I'm trying. He came up with a bowl of pasta and plopped down next to me. Eat, otherwise you're angry when you're hungry. Melanie took the bowl, but did not eat, but looked at him. I'm serious, Alex. I'm 22, I graduated from college. So what? Work in a cafe for the rest of your life. You won't be in the cafe, he poked her with a spoon. You will open an agency, marketing, advertising, everything as you dreamed. And how? She narrowed her eyes. Are you a wizard? Not yet, he smiled. But I can take another part-time job. Night shifts in a warehouse pay more. Alex, you're already falling off your feet, she frowned. Study, construction, now a warehouse. You'll go crazy. For your sake, I won't go crazy, he shrugged. We can handle it, Mel. As always. She fell silent, looking at him. This guy who fixed toasters and took her to the lake was now ready to work hard at night to make her dream come true. She put the bowl down and hugged him. You're crazy, Carter, she muttered into his shoulder. Aren't you? He laughed. We are a team. Thus began their plan. Melanie graduated from college with a degree in marketing, but there was no job. She wanted her own agency, small but her own, to help local businesses with advertising. Alex supported her from the first minute. A week later, he came home at 3 in the morning with black eyes and a wad of cash. Here, he threw the money on the table. Consider it the first payment. Oh my God, Alex, she jumped up from the couch. You look like a zombie. Zombie with money, he grinned. Now it's your turn to move. Melanie stirred. She called friends, looked for clients, and drew a logo on napkins. Alex took on more shifts, and by the spring of 2011, they had accumulated the required amount. That would be enough to rent a tiny office in downtown Austin, a former warehouse with peeling paint and one window. I saw him, Melanie said at dinner, poking at the potatoes with a fork. It's terrible, but cheap. Then let's take it, Alex nodded. I'll talk to the boss and take an advance. You are sure? She looked at him. This is all our money. I'm sure, he squeezed her hand. This is your start, Mel. The next day, he came home from work earlier than usual and threw something on the table in front of her. She looked up from her laptop and froze. These were the keys. What is this? She asked, slowly taking them in her hands. The keys to your office, he smiled. Signed the contract today. You're on it, Melanie Carter. Carter. She narrowed her eyes. I'm Davis for now, if you haven't forgotten. Bye, he winked. But I was thinking. He reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a small box. Melanie gasped, dropping her keys. Alex, what are you? Her voice trembled. Melanie Davis, he opened the box, revealing a simple ring with a tiny stone. Marry me. Let's make it official. She looked at him, then at the ring, then back at him. You're crazy, she breathed. We're barely making ends meet, and you're buying a ring. It's inexpensive, he shrugged. Melanie laughed and tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes, Carter, hell yeah, she rushed towards him, hugging him so hard he almost fell. Careful, he laughed, holding her. You'll crush me. It was you who brought me down. She pulled away, wiping her eyes. Keys, rings. What are you, Superman? No, just your boyfriend. He put the ring on her finger. And soon a husband. That day, it never came to dinner in their house. It was very hot. They decided to get married quickly, no lavish ceremonies, only close ones. A month later, in June 2011, they stood in the garden of her parents' house. Melanie was in a simple white dress that Caitlin had helped pick out. Alex was in a shirt and jeans because he hated a tuxedo. Bill, Melanie's father, muttered that Carter could use a shave, but Linda slapped him on the arm. "They're happy, Bill," she said. "Leave them alone." Caitlin was a bridesmaid and nearly spilled champagne on Melanie's dress. "You're Carter now," she giggled, raising her glass. "Congratulations, Mrs. Businesswoman." "Thank you, Kate," Melanie clinked glasses with her. "But if you ruin my dress, I'll fire you." "You haven't hired me yet," Caitlin winked. "But I'm in if anything happens." The next day, they went to the office. Melanie opened the door with the keys he handed her and froze. The empty room smelled of paint and dust, but for her, it was a start. "Look," she walked around the room. "There's a table here, there's a sofa for clients. And there is my office. Cabinet." Alex raised an eyebrow. "This is one room." Then the corner, she poked him in the side. "Don't spoil my dream." They bought a cheap table at a thrift store. Alex installed shelves, and Melanie hung up her sketches of the logo Mel Carter Marketing. A week later, she found her first client, a local coffee shop that needed a flyer. They paid $100, but to her it was like $1,000,000. "Alex, I did it," she said in the evening, showing him the receipt. "First earnings. I told you so," he hugged her. "I believe in you, Mel. It couldn't have happened without you." They sat on the office floor, drank beer from cans, and laughed. This was their start, small, shaky, but theirs. The wedding and the keys became a symbol. They built not only a business, but also a family, and both knew that there was still a lot of work ahead. The alarm clock squealed at 6:30 a.m. and Melanie Carter stuck her hand out from under the covers, smacking the button. She groaned, rolling over onto her back, and immediately bumped into a warm body nearby. Alex lay with his face buried in the pillow, his dark hair sticking out in all directions. "Get up, lazybones," she muttered, pushing him on the shoulder. "You promised coffee." "I promised coffee on the weekend," he muttered without opening his eyes. "Today is Tuesday." "Every day is a day off, if you love me," she stretched, throwing off the blanket. Alex opened one eye, watching her stand up in his old t-shirt, which barely covered her hips. He grinned and reached out to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Where are you going?" His voice was hoarse from sleep, and his hands slid under his t-shirt. "Alex," she squealed, trying to wriggle free. "I'm late for work." "You still have an hour." He pulled her back onto the bed, rolling so that she was under him. "There is time." "I have a meeting at 8, she laughed, resting her hands on his chest. "Let's go, crazy." "I won't let you go." He leaned down, kissing her neck. "You taste better than coffee." Melanie rolled her eyes, but her resistance weakened. His lips moved along her collarbone, and his hands confidently lifted her t-shirt higher. "You're unbearable," she breathed, but her fingers were already tangled in his hair. "And you'll be late if you resist for too long," he winked, snuggling closer to her. "But I'm fast." "Promising," she laughed, but after a second her laughter gave way to a quiet groan. They got carried away longer than they had planned. When Melanie finally jumped out of bed, her hair was disheveled and her cheeks were burning. "You're a bastard, Carter." She rushed to the closet, pulling on her skirt. "Now I'll definitely be late." "But your morning got off to a good start." He lazily stretched out on the bed, watching her. "Say thank you." "Thank you for making me late." She threw a pillow at him, buttoning her blouse. "Get up already." Alex laughed, but still stood up, pulling on his jeans. It was the morning of April 2018, and their lives had finally returned to normal. 7 years after the wedding, they achieved what they dreamed of. A cozy house in the suburbs of Austin, 2-story, with a veranda and a small garden, which Melanie tried to improve, but the flowers were still withering. Her agency, Mel Carter Marketing, has grown from a tiny office in a warehouse to a team of 5, with contracts from local restaurants and startups. Alex had graduated from university, received an engineering degree, and was now working for a construction company, designing residential complexes. They no longer counted every dollar. The account was cushioned, and the mortgage was almost paid off. Melanie ran into the kitchen, stuffing toast into her mouth as she went. Alex followed, turning on the coffee maker. "Who are you meeting today?" he asked, pouring coffee into her thermal mug. "With the owner of the new bar on 6th Street. She grabbed the mug. "Wants advertising for the opening. Large order." "Cool," he nodded. "And today I handed over the drawings. If everything goes well, the boss promised a bonus. Then we'll buy a new sofa," she winked, grabbing her bag. "This one creaks like a cart." "It squeaks because you jump on it," he grinned, remembering how last week she tried to arrange a dance to the radio. "It was training," she poked him with a finger. "Kiss and leave." Melanie rushed to the car, and Alex finished his coffee and went to the shower. He turned on the hot water, thinking about how far he and Melanie had come. Home, work, stability, everything they talked about on the hood of his Ford in 2008 has become a reality. Well, almost everything. Children and a dog remained in the plans for now. When he came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, Melanie had already left. He walked onto the veranda with a mug of coffee, looking out over their yard. The grass has grown, it should be mowed this weekend. He smiled, remembering how last night they sat here with beer, chatting about trifles. "You know," she said then, clinging to him, "I can't believe that everything is so good with us." "And I believe," he clinked the can with her, "we deserve it, Mel. Maybe it's time to get a dog." She looked at him with a sly smile. "First the lawnmower," he laughed. "Otherwise, we'll lose her in the grass." She elbowed him, but her laugh was contagious. They sat until it got dark, and he suddenly caught himself thinking that he wanted to freeze this moment she was nearby, a warm evening, their home. In the afternoon, he went to work, handed in the drawings, and received praise from his boss. "Good job, Carter," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "The prize is yours." "Thank you, sir," Alex nodded, already imagining the new sofa. In the evening, Melanie returned home with a bottle of wine and a smile from ear to ear. "My order," she announced, throwing her bag on the table. They signed a contract for 3 months. Seriously, he came up, hugging her. "You're a genius, Mel. And you are my hero." She kissed him on the cheek. "Open the wine." They had dinner pizza with pineapples because she still loved this nightmare, and he was still grumbling. After dinner, they went out onto the veranda with glasses of wine. The night was warm, the stars were bright, and the grass in the yard rustled in the light wind. Melanie leaned against the railing, looking out over the garden. "You know," she said, twirling the glass in her hands, "it's time to think about the children." Alex froze, holding the glass to his lips. "Children?" he asked, putting the wine on the table. "Are you serious?" "Yeah," she turned to him, her eyes sparkling in the twilight. "We're 29. We have a house and a job." "Why not?" He sat down on the step, looking up at her. "I don't mind, Mel," he smiled. "It's just, are you sure you're ready?" "Ready." She sat down next to him, clinging to him. "I want a girl, like me as a child, with those stupid pigtails." "And a boy," he added, remembering their school conversation. "Exactly," she laughed. "And a dog. But first, the children. Imagine, little Melanie is running around here, tearing up your drawings. Or little Alex," he picked up. "Break the lawnmower like your dad." "Oh my God," she poked him with her elbow. "Not this." "But I'm serious, Alex. Let's try it." He looked at her smile, at the way she glowed with the idea. Children. They talked about it back in school, but then it was a dream, distant and abstract. Now it was real. The house, the veranda, their life, everything is ready for a new step. "Okay," he nodded, hugging her shoulders. "Let's try." "Let's begin." She blinked her glass at him. "But in the morning, you don't see me, you touch. I need to get some sleep." "I don't promise," he laughed, and she slapped him on the knee. They sat for another hour, chatting about what they would name the children. She suggested Emma and Liam. He joked about Bob and Marge. This was their moment: stability, love, and plans that no longer frightened, but warmed. The night ended on the sofa, where they fell asleep while watching the series, hugging each other. Melanie stood at the kitchen window, watching the rain patter on the glass. On the table lay a box of pregnancy tests, the fifth one this year. She opened it, took out a white strip, and sighed. Alex was busy in the living room, screwing on the new shelf they had bought at Crossroads. "Are you ready?" she shouted without turning around. "Ready for what?" He appeared at the door, wiping his hands on his jeans. "The shelf is hanging, if anything." To this, she raised the test, shaking it in the air. Attempt number 5. Alex walked over, hugging her from behind. "Mel, relax." He rested his chin on her shoulder. "Everything will be okay." "It's been a year, Alex." She turned, looking into his eyes. "A year and nothing." "Well, we're trying," he winked, trying to diffuse her. "I'm the champion here, if you haven't noticed." "Oh, yes, champion," she snorted, but smiled. "Okay, I'll go." "Wait." She disappeared into the bathroom, and Alex plopped down on a chair, drumming his fingers on the table. A year has passed since their conversation on the veranda April 2019. They decided to give it a try, and at first it was fun. No alarm clocks in the morning, spontaneous nights, her jokes about working out. But as the months passed, the tests remained empty, and the fun gave way to anxiety. Melanie came out 5 minutes later, holding the test. Her face was stony. "Nothing," she said, throwing the strip on the table. "One damn line again." "Mel." He stood up, but she raised her hand. "Don't, Alex." Her voice trembled. "I'm fine. Just tired." He nodded, not knowing what to say. They sat at the table, silently looking at the test as if it might change. Finally, she spoke. "Maybe something is wrong with us." "I don't think so." He took her hand. "We are healthy and young. Just time." "What if not?" She looked at him, and a shadow flashed in her eyes. "If it's not just time?" Alex squeezed her fingers. "Then let's check," he said. "But I'm sure everything is fine." The next day, she made an appointment with the doctor. Alex took the day off, and they went to the clinic, a white building with the smell of antiseptic and magazines in the waiting room. Melanie fiddled with the strap of her bag as they waited. "If something is wrong, you won't leave me, will you?" she suddenly asked, looking at the floor. "Mel, are you serious?" He turned to her. "I'm with you forever, with or without children." She nodded, but the tension did not go away. They were called into the office. Dr. Claire Morgan, a woman in her 40s with short blonde hair, smiled welcomingly. "So, Melanie, Alex," she opened the folder. "Tell me what worries you." "We've been trying for a year," Melanie began. Her voice was even, but her fingers were clutching the bag. "And nothing. The tests are empty." "I understand," Claire nodded. "This is more common than it seems. Let's start with the analyses. Pass both to eliminate problems." "What if there are problems?" Alex asked, crossing his arms. "Then we'll figure it out." Claire looked at him. "We have many options, treatment, procedures. But first, the facts." They took tests, blood, hormones, everything the doctor prescribed. The week of waiting dragged on like a month. Melanie became quieter, sat with her laptop more often, but work did not distract her. Alex tried to calm her down. He cooked dinner, turned on her favorite comedies, and even tried to dance with her in the kitchen. "You're a terrible dancer," she said one evening when he stepped on her foot. "But you laugh," he spun her, pulling her towards him. Already a victory. "You're an idiot." She buried her face in his chest, but her voice softened. "Thank you." The results came on Friday. They sat in Claire's office again, and Melanie squeezed Alex's hand until her knuckles turned white. "Well," Claire opened the folder, looking at them over her glasses. "Good news. You are both healthy." "Are you healthy?" Melanie asked, her voice trembling. "Then why doesn't anything work out?" "Sometimes it's inexplicable," Claire shrugged. "All indicators are normal. Perhaps stress or just time." "Time," Melanie chuckled. "Everyone talks about time." "I know it's annoying," Claire smiled, "but it's true. You are young, you have years ahead of you. Relax, live. This often happens when you stop waiting." "Easy to say," Melanie muttered, but her shoulders relaxed a little. What if it doesn't work out? Alex asked, looking at the doctor. Is there a backup plan? Yes, Claire nodded. Ava, for example. But I wouldn't rush. Give yourself more time. If so, come. They left the clinic in silence. In the car, Melanie turned to him. Did you hear? We are healthy, she said, but there was bitterness in her voice. And I thought, me too, he started the engine. But that's good, right? We're fine. Okay, she nodded, looking out the window. I just want it that way. I know, he took her hand. We'll try again, Mel. We don't give up. At home, she went to the bedroom, and he stayed in the kitchen, making coffee. An hour later, she came down wearing his t-shirt with red eyes. Sorry, she said, sitting down next to him. I'm just tired of thinking about it. Don't apologize, he pushed the mug towards her. Do you want us to go somewhere? Shall we take a break? Maybe, she shrugged. But not today. Let's just sit. They sat drinking coffee, and he turned on her favorite, Friends. She pressed herself against him, and for the first time in a week, he heard her quiet laugh when Ross got stuck in his pants. You're like Ross, she said, poking him in the side. You're always breaking things, too. And you're like Monica, he grinned. You control everything. But we are a couple, she smiled, and the shadow in her eyes dissipated slightly. They spent the night together not for the sake of trying, but simply to be closer. In the morning, she woke up first and looked at him. We can handle it, right? She asked quietly. We'll manage, he nodded, hugging her, as always. The Mel Carter marketing office door was buzzing with music and voices. Melanie stood at the refreshments table, adjusting the red dress Caitlin had coaxed her into wearing. It was her agency's first party and occasion to celebrate a contract with a coffee chain, which brought them a very substantial sum in 3 months. July 2019, 3 months after the visit to the doctor, and life seemed to be back on track. Are you sure I don't look like a Christmas tree? Melanie asked, turning to Caitlin, who was pouring the wine. You look like a boss, Caitlin winked, handing her the glass. Relax, Mel. This is your evening. Okay, Melanie took the wine, looking around the room. The office was transformed. Tables were moved towards the walls, garlands were hung, and a pop music playlist was turned on. Her team of 5 employees, including newcomer Jake Reed, chatted and laughed. Alex came in later, after work, wearing jeans and a shirt that Melanie had ironed that morning. Hello, hero of the evening, he approached her, kissing her on the cheek. You look gorgeous. Thank you, she smiled, straightening his collar. You're okay, too. Don't pester me here, okay? I don't promise, he grinned, taking a beer from the cooler. Where is your new contractor? Coffee shop owner? I didn't come, she shrugged. But the team is assembled. Alex nodded, looking around the crowd. He knew Caitlin, Melanie's friend, who now worked as a designer at an agency. There was also Sarah, a copywriter, and Mike, a manager. He saw them a couple of times. But his gaze settled on the guy at the window tall, with light stubble and a careless hairstyle. He was telling Melanie something, waving his arms, and she laughed loudly, sincerely, as she had not laughed at home for weeks. Who is this clown? Alex asked, nodding in their direction. This is Jake, Caitlin said, coming up behind her. Melanie's new assistant. It's been working for a month. Cool guy. Cool, Alex repeated, taking a sip of beer. Yeah. He watched as Melanie patted Jake on the shoulder, who responded with a wide smile. Her eyes sparkled as if someone had turned on the light inside. Alex frowned, but remained silent, twirling the bottle in his hands. The party was gaining momentum. Sarah put on Sweet Caroline, and Caitlin dragged Mike to dance. Melanie returned to Alex, beaming. How do you like it? She asked, clinging to him. You're doing great, Mel. Thank you, she blinked her glass at him. This is my best month. This is a lot of money, can you imagine? I imagine, he smiled, but his gaze slid to Jake, who was now chatting with Sarah. Did the new guy help with the case? Jake? Yes, he's smart, she nodded. Ideas pour out like from a cornucopia. Lucky find. Successful, Alex echoed, but a shadow flashed in his voice. Melanie didn't notice. She dragged him to the snack table, forcing him to try the mini burgers. Eat, otherwise you're as thin as a mop, she said, stuffing a burger into his mouth. I'm not skinny, I'm fit, he swallowed, wiping his lips. You'll fatten me up, and I won't fit into my jeans. Then we'll buy new ones, she laughed, and he relaxed. For a minute. Then she went to Jake to discuss something about work, as she said. Alex remained against the wall, watching. Jake was telling a story, waving his arms, and Melanie was laughing, almost spilling her wine. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair was out of place, and she looked alive, such as was not the case at home, where lately they had been silent more than they spoke. Who is this guy? Alex muttered under his breath, clutching his glass. He stood aside, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Caitlin walked over, noticing his gaze. Are you okay? She asked, jabbing him with her elbow. You look like your beer has gone sour. It's okay, he shrugged, just looking. Jake? She chuckled. He's harmless. Just the life of the party. Yeah, Alex nodded, but his eyes didn't leave Melanie. The party lasted until midnight. Melanie drank too much, and Alex called a taxi. In the car, she snuggled up to him, sleepily muttering, Did you see how cool we were? This is my best day. I saw it, he hugged her, looking out the window. You were shining, Mel. Is it true? She smiled, closing her eyes. Fine. At home, he put her to bed, taking off his shoes. She fell asleep instantly, and he sat next to Hero, looking at her face. For 3 months after the tests, they tried to live as before work, home, rare weekends by the lake. They no longer bought tests, but the silence between them grew. There was a lot of work, and their schedules did not coincide. Both came too tired. And today she laughed with Jake as she had not laughed with him lately. He lay down next to him, but sleep did not come. Alex woke up to the sound of the alarm clock 6:30 a.m., as always. He reached out to Melanie, but her side of the bed was empty. The sound of water came from the bathroom. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and shouted, Mel, are you up already? Yes, her voice broke through the noise. Meeting at 7:30. New client. It's early, he stood up, pulling on his t-shirt. Should I make some coffee? No time, she jumped out of the bathroom, already in a blouse and skirt, her hair wet. I'll pick it up on the way. He nodded, watching her rush around the room, packing her bag. It was the morning of August 2019, a month after the party. Something has changed. Melanie began to slip away, not literally, but he felt it. She left early, came back later, and their conversations boiled down to, how are you, and what's for dinner? What time are you staying until today? He asked as she put on her shoes. I don't know, she shrugged, without looking at him. Maybe I'll be late. Affairs. Again. The word came out more sharply than he intended. She froze, looking up. What do you mean, again? Her tone became prickly. I have work, Alex. I know, he raised his hands. It's just, you're not at home much lately. Because I have a business, she grabbed the keys. You wanted me to build it. I wanted to, he nodded. Okay, go. Good luck. She left, slamming the door a little harder than usual. Alex remained in the kitchen, staring at the empty coffee maker. He did not make coffee, he lost his appetite. He watched for the next month. It started unconsciously. He simply noticed little things. Melanie began checking her phone more often, answered briefly, and went into another room if they called from work. She stopped inviting him to lunch at the office, as before, and their evenings were reduced to TV series, where she fell asleep on the couch. One day, he asked, Is everything okay at work? Yes, she nodded, flipping through something on her laptop. There are just a lot of orders. And this Jake? He tried to say it casually. How is he? Fine, she didn't even look up. Works. Why are you asking? Just like that, he shrugged. I saw him at a party. Cheerful guy. Yeah, she smiled, but quickly hid her smile. He's great. Alex remained silent, but the splinter from the party grew into a needle. He began to monitor not like a detective, but like a husband who senses something is wrong. In the mornings, she left at 7, although she used to like to sleep until 8. In the evenings, she called, "I'll be late, don't wait up." He waited. 2 weeks later, he decided to check. On Wednesday, after finishing work, he drove to her office, a small building on the outskirts of downtown Austin. It was already dark, almost 9. He parked across the street, keeping the engine running, and waited. At 9:15, the lights in the office windows went out and Melanie left. But not alone. Jake walked next to her, holding her bag while she typed something on her phone. They laughed. Alex gripped the steering wheel but didn't move. They reached Jake's car, a black Honda Civic, and he opened the door for her. Melanie sat down and they drove away. Alex sat looking at the empty parking lot, feeling a chill in his chest. She arrived home at 10:30, throwing her bag on the table. "Hi," she said, taking off her shoes. "You weren't sleeping?" "No." He sat on the sofa with a beer. "How's work?" "Tiring," she sighed. "But they did everything. New banner for coffee shops." "Cool," he nodded. "Did you get there yourself?" "No, Jake gave me a lift." She walked into the kitchen, pouring water. "My car is being repaired, remember?" "Oh, right." He took a sip, looking at the TV. "Nice guy." "Yeah," she nodded without turning around. "Okay, I'll take a shower and go to bed." She left, but he stayed. "Jake gave me a ride." He saw it with his own eyes, but did not say a word. Silence became his tactic. The next time was on Friday. She was delayed again, calling at 8. "I'll be late, eat without me." He drove to the office again. At 9:40, she left with Jake, who gave her another ride. Alex watched the Honda turn the corner and was silent. At home, she said, "Tired as a dog. Jake saved me, otherwise I would have had to drag myself on foot." "Well done," Alex said, without looking up from the phone. She didn't notice his tone, or she didn't want to. So a month passed. Melanie was beaming at work. He saw it when he stopped by for coffee in the afternoon. She laughed with Jake, discussed projects, and patted him on the shoulder. At home, she was different, tired, distant. Alex noticed how she hid her smile when messages arrived, how she went to bed earlier, citing fatigue. One day, he couldn't stand it. They had dinner. She ordered Chinese food because she didn't want to cook. "Chalk," he began, poking the rice with chopsticks. "Are you happy?" "What?" She looked up from the noodles. "Certainly. And you?" "Yes," he nodded. "You just work a lot. Aren't you burning out?" "No," she smiled, but briefly. "This is my business, Alex. You know." "I know," he nodded. "Just checking." She shrugged and went back to eating. He didn't ask about Jake. He didn't ask why she glows with him, but goes out at home. He watched. Alex sat at the kitchen table, staring at his empty coffee mug. The clock showed 7:15 m. Saturday, early September 2019. Melanie was still sleeping yesterday. She returned at 11, again citing work. He didn't ask who gave her a ride, although he knew the answer. A month of observations left a residue in him, a mixture of doubts, anger, and fatigue. He could no longer pretend that everything was normal. "We have to do something," he muttered, tapping his fingers on the table. He stood up, walked into the living room, and opened his laptop. Melanie loved spontaneous trips. Maybe a vacation would shake her up. They haven't had a vacation together since last summer, when they went to the lake. He went to the booking site and chose Miami warm sea, beaches, a week without work. He booked the hotel and tickets without telling her. Let there be a surprise. But something else was spinning in my head. Yesterday, he stopped by to see his friend Tony, a lawyer with whom he studied at university. They drank beer in his office, and Alex, after a long silence, said, "Tony, I need documents." Tony listened, sighed, but promised to do it. 2 days later, Alex picked up the papers, a thin folder with forms where you only needed to sign. He hid them in a drawer in his bedroom under some old bills. Melanie didn't go there. Now, with the laptop on his lap, he looked at the reservation confirmation. Vacation is a chance to fix everything. Or finish it. He closed the lid and went to wake her up. "Mel, get up." He shook her shoulder. She lay with her head buried in her pillow. How much time? She muttered without opening her eyes. 7:30, he sat down on the edge of the bed. I have an idea. Which? She opened one eye. Vacation, he smiled. Miami. A week on the beach. What do you say? Miami? She sat down, rubbing her face. Seriously? Yeah, he nodded. I took the tickets. We need to rest. Wow, she smiled, but weakly. Cool. Thank you, Alex. You're welcome, he stood up. I'll go get some coffee. Want? Yes, she nodded, looking after him. He went down to the kitchen, but Melanie's smile did not displace the cold in his chest. She agreed, but without the fire he was waiting for. The days passed. Melanie was delayed even more often, project for coffee shops, urgent edits. He didn't ask about Jake, but he noticed. Her phone was flashing with messages. She answered briefly and put it away. In the evening, he said, Mel, let's pack our bags in advance, so as not to run on the last day. Good idea, she nodded, sitting with her laptop. I'll be there tomorrow after work. And today, he looked at her. Are you late? Yes, she didn't look up. We are finishing the banners. Okay, he nodded. I'll start. He went into the bedroom and pulled out their suitcases, old, worn, with stickers from previous trips. He folded his things, shorts, t-shirts, sneakers. Then he took the papers out of his jacket. He looked at them and squeezed them in his hand. We can't wait any longer, he said quietly, looking at Melanie's empty suitcase. The next day she returned at 10, with a bag and a tired face. Did you do everything? He asked, sitting on the couch with a beer. Yeah, she nodded, throwing her bag. Jake helped. He's a genius with deadlines. Cool, Alex took a sip, looking at the TV. Your suitcase is empty. Collect when you can. Tomorrow, she yawned, I'm going to sleep. Calm, he nodded without turning around. For 3 the day before departure, he said. Mel, are you sure you're happy about your vacation? Yes, she smiled, but briefly. We need to rest. We must, he nodded. We've been spending very little time here lately. She looked at him, but didn't say anything. He also remained silent, but the decision was made. The plane landed in Miami at noon, and the sun hit my eyes like a spotlight. Melanie squinted as she and Alex walked to the taxi, dragging their suitcases. The air smelled of salt and fried asphalt. The Ocean Breeze Hotel, a 3-star hotel with white walls and a view of the beach, greeted them with the cool air conditioning and the smile of the receptionist. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, he said, handing over the keys. Room 305, 3rd floor. Thank you, Alex nodded, taking the card. Mel, are we going? Let's go, she smiled, adjusting her sunglasses. I want to go to the sea. They went up to the room, small but cozy, with a balcony and a bed made with white linen. Melanie threw her bag on the floor and collapsed onto the mattress. Oh, I'm alive, she breathed, spreading her arms. A 3-hour flight is hell. You're just tired. Alex put the suitcases against the wall. Let's relax and go to the beach. We agreed. She raised herself on her elbows. Well done for coming up with this. I'm trying, he smiled, but briefly, opening his suitcase. Melanie went into the shower, and he stood at the balcony, looking at the ocean. This was their chance or their end. He decided, today. They went down to the hotel cafe in the evening. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange, and the tables on the terrace were buzzing with the voices of tourists. Melanie ordered a cocktail with an umbrella. Alex ordered a beer. She chatted about the beach and how she wanted to try surfing, and he nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Why are you silent? She asked, taking a sip of her cocktail. Tired? No, he shook his head, looking at the bottle. I'm just thinking. About what? She tilted her head, smiling. He took a deep breath, pulled out a folder from under the table, and placed it in front of her. Melanie froze, her smile slowly fading. What is this? She asked, looking at the papers. Open it, he said quietly. She took the folder, opened it, and skimmed the first page. Application for divorce. Her face turned pale. Alex. Her voice broke. Are you serious? Yes, he nodded, clutching the bottle. Sign if you want. You didn't want to discuss this with me? She looked up, her eyes sparkling with shock. Just like that, on vacation. Didn't you want to discuss treason with me? He looked into her eyes. His voice was even but firm. Melanie recoiled as if struck. Treason? She asked again. I didn't cheat on you, Alex. Not yet, he nodded, putting down his beer. But I've known you too long, Mel. I see all the changes. You are different with him. With Jake. Jake? She frowned. This is work, Alex. He is my assistant. Work, he chuckled. You stay late with him every evening. He gives you a lift, you're lying. You shine with him, but at home there is a shadow. Why wait until it gets worse? Why hurt each other? She was silent, looking at the papers. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't cry, she just pursed her lips. I didn't cheat, she repeated quietly. I swear. I believe, he shrugged. But I see where you are drawn, and I don't want to end our relationship with pain. Do you think I can cheat on you? Her voice rose. After everything we've been through. I don't know, Mel. He looked at her. Tell me. She pushed the folder away, crossing her arms. I love you, she said, looking into his eyes. But you're right, something is wrong. I don't know what. Me too, he nodded. Therefore, we have two options. First, you sign this right now, and we part as friends. Second, we go to a psychologist, find out why your car is pulling to the left, and try to save the marriage. My car? She blinked, but then it dawned on her. You're talking about Jake. About him, he nodded, and about us. Melanie was silent, looking out at the ocean. The waves roared, drowning out the voices around. She took the papers, turned them over in her hands, and put them back. I won't sign, she finally said. You are my whole life, Alex. Our marriage is worth fighting for. Are you sure? He narrowed his eyes. These are not just words. I'm sure, she nodded, her voice becoming firmer. I don't want to lose you. Let's try a psychologist. He looked at her, trying to see if she was sincere. Her eyes were wet but determined. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. When we get back, we'll find someone. We agree. She extended her hand across the table, and he shook it, just like in his school days. But you will tell me everything, he added. About Jake, about everything. I'll tell you, she nodded. And you tell me about this? She pointed at the folder. When did you decide? A month ago, he admitted. After he hugged you at the house. Hug. She frowned, but then remembered. It was nothing, Alex. Just thanks for the help. Maybe nothing, he shrugged. Or maybe not. She sighed, taking a sip of her cocktail. Stupid, she said quietly. You should have told me about this right away. Perhaps, he nodded. They sat in silence, looking at the sunset. The tension did not go away, but it became easier to breathe. The evening ended in the room. They didn't talk. They just went to bed holding hands. The morning in Miami began with the sun breaking through the curtains of room 305. Melanie was the first to wake up, reaching over and nudging Alec in the side. He lay spread out on the bed, the sheet bunched up at his feet. Get up, Carter, she said, sitting down. We're on vacation, and you're sleeping. I'm resting, he muttered without opening his eyes. This is a vacation. No, that's laziness. She pulled the pillow off him and slapped him on the head. Let's go to the beach. You're unbearable. He sat down, rubbing his face, but smiled. Okay, let's go. The conversation in the cafe took place 2 days ago. The folder with documents lay in the suitcase, untouched, like a silent reminder. They did not return to that topic. Instead, they decided to live here, and now. Melanie insisted, let's just have fun, Alex. We'll figure it out later. He agreed. They went down to the beach at 10 in the morning. The sand was hot, the waves were loud, and the air smelled like sunscreen. Melanie threw off her sundress, remaining in a blue bikini, and ran to the water. Catch up, she shouted, looking around. You're like a child, he laughed, pulling off his t-shirt and running after her. She splashed into the water, splashing him, and he dived in after her. They floundered and laughed until the wave knocked her off her feet. Alex caught her, pulling her towards him. "Are you okay?" he asked, wiping the water from her face. "Yes," she giggled, hugging his neck. "But you are now my savior." "Always been," he winked, and they swam on. The day passed in a lazy rhythm. They lay on sun loungers, drank cocktails with pineapples, and played beach volleyball with some tourists. Melanie turned out to be unexpectedly good. Her cheerleading past made itself felt. "You're cheating," Alex said when she scored another goal. "That's talent," she grinned, wiping away the sweat. "Learn, Carter." "I have other talents," he winked, and she spanked him with a towel. In the evening, they returned to the hotel, tanned and tired. Melanie collapsed on the bed, arms outstretched. "I burned," she complained, looking at her reddened shoulders. "Let me see." He sat down next to her, took the cream from her bag, and began to rub it in. His fingers slid over her skin, and she closed her eyes. "You're too good at this," she muttered. "Practice." He leaned down, kissing her neck. "Do you want more?" "Alex," she laughed, pushing him away. "I'm tired." "But I don't." He rolled over, pulling her towards him, and she gave in. The night was hot, not just because of the weather. They forgot about fatigue, about papers, about everything. When she fell asleep, clinging to him, he looked at her and thought that maybe they had not lost each other yet. The next day, she dragged him to the city. They walked along Ocean Drive, ate tacos from a street food truck, and took photos in front of colorful houses. Melanie bought a stupid hat that said Miami Vibes and made him wear it. "You look like a tourist," she said, laughing. "And you look like a local." He adjusted his hat. "Where's my cocktail?" "You'll earn it," she winked, and they moved on. In the evening, they came across a bar with live music salsa, loud and rhythmic. Melanie lit up. "Shall we dance?" she asked, pulling his hand. "I don't know how," he resisted, but she was already dragging him to the dance floor. "I'll teach you." She stood opposite, swaying her hips. "Just move." He tried, but he looked like a robot. She laughed, hugging him. "You're hopeless," she said, but pressed closer. "Okay, just hold me." They danced, or rather, she danced, and he tried not to step on her feet. The music was blasting, people were clapping around, and Melanie was beaming, just like at that party, but now with him. He caught her gaze and smiled. "You're still mine, right?" he asked, shouting over the music. "Always," she nodded, and he kissed her right on the dance floor. The night ended in the room. She pulled off his shirt, he unbuttoned her dress, and they collapsed on the bed, laughing and gasping. It was not just passion, it was their return to each other, step by step. By midweek, they had rented a scooter. Melanie sat behind him, hugging him as they sped along the coast. The wind ruffled her hair, and she screamed with delight. "Faster," she yelled, and he accelerated until she poked him in the back. "You're crazy," he said, stopping at the pier. "You're boring." She jumped down, straightening her shorts. "Let's go swimming." They jumped off the pier, holding hands, and the water splashed around them. She splashed him in the face, he caught her and spun her around. "You're unbearable," he said, laughing. "And you love it," she hugged him, and they swam to the shore. In the evening, they dined at a restaurant by the sea, seafood, wine, candles. Melanie was chatting about how she wanted to open an agency branch in Miami. "Imagine," she said, poking a shrimp with a fork, "office by the beach. You build, I promote." "Like at school," he nodded, sipping his wine. "Only with money." "And with the children," she smiled, but quickly looked away. He noticed, but did not press. They hadn't talked about children since the spring, and the topic hung between them like a shadow. Instead, he took her hand. "We'll still have time, Mel," he said quietly. "I know," she nodded, squeezing his fingers. "Thank you." The last day was lazy. They lay on the beach, drank beer from cans, and built a sandcastle. Melanie sculpted the tower, and he added the bridge. "This is our home," she said, looking at the sand pile. "Then we need a second floor." He poured more sand. "For children." "And dogs," she giggled, and he nodded. They spent the evening in the hotel bar. The music was quieter than in a salsa club, but Melanie still dragged him to dance. They moved slowly, clinging to each other, and she whispered, "I'm glad we're here." "Me too," he kissed her forehead. "You are my Mel." The night became a climax. They returned to the room, and she pushed him onto the bed, laughing. "You're mine, Carter," she said, pulling off her dress. "And you're mine," he pulled her in, and the room was filled with their breath. They stayed up until 3 in the morning, passion, jokes, quiet conversations. When she fell asleep, he looked at her hair scattered across the pillow, and whispered, "You have always been my weakness." She didn't hear, but in her sleep she snuggled closer to him. In the morning, they packed their bags, and he pushed the folder away. He hoped they would never need it. The plane hummed as it rose over Miami, and the sun glared through the windows. Alex and Melanie sat in row 17, he by the window, she in the middle, next to an elderly woman who was already dozing with a magazine on her lap. Melanie leaned back in her chair, stretching. "I'm exhausted," she said, looking at him. "You were driving me." "I?" Alex raised an eyebrow, putting his phone in his pocket. "You were the one running around like a hurricane. Beach, dancing, scooters. Who pestered you every night?" She poked him with her elbow, grinning. "You're insatiable, Carter." "Well, your appetites have become no less," he winked, lowering his voice. "I can barely cope." She snorted, covering her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. "Poor thing," she said, leaning towards him. "Maybe you need an assistant." "Assistant?" He narrowed his eyes. "Who are you talking about?" "Well," she paused theatrically. "Jake, for example. He's smart." Alex froze, looking at her. She kept a serious face for a second, but then her lips trembled and she burst out laughing. "You should have seen your face," she breathed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Oh my God, this is priceless." "Very funny," he rolled his eyes, but the corners of his mouth turned up. "Don't you dare even think about a lover, Melanie Carter." Her laughter burst out loud, ringing like in her school years. It spread throughout the cabin, drowning out the roar of the engines. The passengers in front turned around, someone smiled, the flight attendant at the aisle raised an eyebrow, but also chuckled. The elderly neighbor woke up, blinked and muttered, "Youth," but her lips twitched into a smile. "You're unbearable," Alex shook his head, but laughed to himself. "The whole plane knows now." "Let them know," she wiped away tears of laughter. "You started it yourself." "I was just stating a fact," he shrugged. "Your appetites are the level of an Olympic champion." "Then you're a coach," she pointed her finger at him, "and don't complain." "I'm not complaining," he leaned closer. "But if you call Jake, I'll strangle you." "Oh, so dramatic," she rolled her eyes. "Relax, Romeo. You are my only champion." "Good to hear," he grinned, leaning back. He smiled, looking out the porthole. The clouds floated under the wing, and the tension the last few months seemed to dissolve in this noise. A week in Miami gave them something back, not everything, but enough to breathe easier. The joke about Jake might have hurt him a month ago, but now he was just laughing. The plane landed in Austin late at night, and the rain pattered on the cab windows as Alex and Melanie drove home. Their suitcases rattled in the trunk, and the cabin smelled of wet leather and Roadhouse coffee. A week in Miami had left a tan on their faces and a warmth in their chests, but the conversation in the cafe and the folder in the suitcase still hung between them. At home, they collapsed on the sofa without unpacking their bags. Melanie snuggled close to him, and he turned on the TV, but they both knew that the vacation was a respite, not a solution. The morning of the next day, Saturday, October 5th, began with coffee and a laptop. Alex made espresso while Melanie sat at the table Googling Austin family therapists. "Look," she said, pointing at the screen, "Dr. Emily Stone. 5 stars, tons of reviews. Warm, professional, helps couples find common ground." "Sounds good." He put the mugs on the table and sat down next to them. "Where does he receive it?" "In the center, not far from the office." She opened the website. "There is an online recording. Do you want it right now?" "Come on," he nodded, taking a sip of coffee, "until they changed their minds." She filled out the form. Alex and Melanie Carter, couples counseling, urgent. The answer came within an hour, a free window next Wednesday, October 9th at 16 o'clock. Melanie showed him the letter. Fitz, she asked. Fitz, he nodded. Are you sure you want to? I'm sure, she looked into his eyes. And you? Yes, he smiled. We agreed. They spent the weekend quietly, unpacking their suitcases, doing laundry, and going grocery shopping. Alex took the folder out of his suitcase and hid it in a drawer. Melanie saw it, but didn't ask. This was their silent agreement. First the psychologist, then the decisions. On Monday, life returned to normal. Melanie left for the office at 8. Alex went to the construction site at 9. She called at lunchtime. How is the day? She asked, rustling papers in the background. Okay, he stood at the coffee machine in the office. I'm finishing the drawings. You? Busy, she sighed. New client, bar on 6th. Jake helps with the layouts. Jake, he repeated, trying to keep his voice level. Cool. Yes, she didn't notice his tone. See you later, he nodded. Love you. And I you, she hung up. He finished his coffee, looking out the window. Jake. The name still stung the ears, but the vacation softened the edge. He decided to wait. Emily Stone would sort it out. Wednesday came quickly. They met at home at 3, changed clothes, and went to the center. Emily's office was in a low building with a sign that said Stone Counseling. The reception room smelled of lavender. There were magazines on the table, and the secretary, a girl with short hair, smiled. Carter's, come in, the doctor is waiting. Emily Stone turned out to be a woman in her 40s, with dark hair in a neat bun and warm brown eyes. Her office was cozy, a sofa, 2 chairs, a table with a notepad, and a box of tissues just in case. Hi, she stood up, shaking their hands. I'm Emily. Sit wherever is comfortable. Melanie chose the sofa. Alex sat next to her. Emily settled into the chair opposite her, placing her notebook on her lap. So, she began, looking at them. What brings you here? Melanie glanced at Alec, and he nodded at her. We have problems, she said, fiddling with the strap of her bag. What problems? Emily tilted her head, her voice soft but direct. We moved away, Melanie sighed. I work hard, and so does he. And he thinks I'm cheating. I don't just think. Alex turned to her. Mel, I saw you with Jake. I didn't cheat. She raised her voice, but then stopped short, looking at Emily. Sorry. Nothing. Emily smiled. Let's figure it out. Alex, why are you thinking about cheating? She's different from him. He crossed his arms, laughs, beams, and at home he is silent. Delayed. I saw him give her a lift and hug her. It was friendly, Melanie interjected. He's my assistant, Alex. Maybe so, he nodded. But I feel like I'm losing her. Emily wrote something down on her notepad as she looked at them. Melanie, what do you say? She asked. I love Alex. Melanie squeezed his hand. I always loved it. But yes, I have changed something. Work is my everything, and there I am. Alive. At home I switch off. Why? Emily looked at her. I don't know, Melanie shrugged. Maybe she's tired. Maybe because of the children. Children? Emily raised an eyebrow. We tried for a year, Alex intervened. It didn't work out. Both are healthy, but nothing. It's pressing, Melanie nodded. I won't talk about it, but I think. Emily put her pen down, looking at them. Let's figure out what's eating you, she said, her voice becoming firmer. You both carry a load unspoken heavy. Alex, you're afraid of losing her. Melanie, you're hiding your feelings. It's not cheating, but it's a barrier. Do you want to break it? Yes, Melanie nodded first. Want. Me too, Alex squeezed her hand in response. We decided to go to Miami. Psychologist or divorce, I don't want to wait until she crosses the line. Divorce? Emily narrowed her eyes. Is it on the table? It was, he nodded. I took the papers. But here we are. Okay, Emily smiled. So you chose the fight. I'll help. Let's start with honesty. What don't you tell each other? They fell silent. Melanie looked at Alec, and he looked at her. I'm afraid that you will stop loving me, she said quietly, if there are no children. And I'm afraid that you're already with someone else, he answered, looking at the floor, even if not physically. Emily nodded, writing it down. This is the beginning, she said. Next time we'll dig deeper. Do you agree? Yes, they answered almost in unison. The session ended after an hour. They left silently, but holding hands. Emily Stone's office was as cozy as the first time. The sofa, the armchairs, the smell of lavender. Alex and Melanie sat next to each other, a little closer than at the last session. This was their third meeting Wednesday, October 16th, 2019. They went to Emily for 2 weeks, delving into their fears, and something began to shift. Melanie was less silent at home. Alex stopped freezing at the mention of Jake. But the tension was still lurking in the corners. Emily sat across from her, a notepad on her lap, her dark hair slightly disheveled from the long day. So, she began, looking at them, how was your week? You were talking about children, as we agreed. Yes, Melanie nodded, fiddling with the strap of her bag. A little. It's hard. Why? Emily tilted her head. Because I blame myself, Melanie sighed. We are healthy, but nothing works out. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. It's not your fault, Mel. Alex took her hand. We're both in this. But I feel like I'm letting you down. She looked at him, her voice trembling. You want children, so do I, and I. Stop. Emily raised her hand. Let's figure this out. Alex, how do you feel when she says that? It hurts, he shrugged. I don't want her to blame herself. It's not her fault. Whose? Emily looked at him. It's a draw, he shook his head. It happens. Okay, Emily nodded, writing it down. Melanie, what do you think? Does it just happen? I don't know. Melanie looked away. I want to believe that we can still do it. But sometimes it seems not. The session went on as usual. They talked about fears, about how the silence grew between them, how Melanie's work became her refuge. Alex admitted that he still thinks about Jake, although less. Emily watched, taking notes. They were nearing the end of the hour when Melanie's phone rang, a loud, sharp sound. She shuddered, reached into her bag to turn it off, and in her haste dropped it on the floor. The contents spilled out: keys, lipstick, wallet, and a small white bottle of pills. Alex leaned over to help, but froze when he saw the jar. She rolled under the sofa, and he reached for her, lifting her up. What is this, Mel? He asked, holding it in his hand. The voice was quiet but tense. Melanie turned pale, looking at the jar. It's nothing. She reached out to take it, but he pulled his hand away. Nothing? He squinted, looking at the label. The name was unfamiliar. Is this medicine? Emily cleared her throat, getting their attention. Let's figure it out, she said softly. Melanie, what is this? Melanie pursed her lips, looking at the floor. Then she exhaled. These are pills. To get pregnant. What? Alex turned to her. Do you accept them? Yes, she nodded, without looking up. It's already been 3 months. 3 months? He raised his voice. And you didn't tell me? I was afraid. She looked at him, her eyes sparkling. You would say it's stupid. Chalk. He shook his head, clutching the jar. Where are they even from? Caitlin did, she sighed. She said that her friend bought it through someone. They should have helped. Emily leaned forward, looking at them. Melanie, have you checked them with a doctor? She asked. No, Melanie shook her head. Caitlin said they were safe. Natural. Natural, Alex chuckled, looking at the jar. Did you just believe her? I wanted to try. She looked up. I'm tired of waiting, Alex. Tired of empty tests. He fell silent, looking at her. Emily took the floor. Alex, how do you feel now? She asked. I didn't want to upset you. Melanie turned to him. You would say no. Hell yes, I would say no. He threw the jar on the table. You're drinking some kind of rubbish without knowing what it is. It's not rubbish, she objected, but her voice was weak. I thought it would help. Emily raised her hand to stop them. Let's breathe, she said. Melanie, why didn't you tell Alex? Because he... He would judge, she swallowed, or forbid it. And you, Alex? Emily looked at him. What would you do? I would ask what it is, he shrugged, and I would take her to the doctor. I wouldn't prohibit it, but it's a secret. Again, a mystery. Melanie lowered her head, fiddling with her fingers. Sorry, she said quietly. I didn't want to make you angry. I'm not angry that you want children. I want that too. He looked at her. I'm angry that you are silent. Emily took the jar, turned it over in her hands. Let's do this, she said. I'll look at the composition and find out what it is. And you can talk at home, honestly. No secrets. Okay, Melanie nodded, looking at Alec. Shall we talk? We'll talk, he nodded, but his gaze was firm. But no more surprises, Melanie Carter. She smiled faintly, and the session ended. They left in silence, but he took her bag to carry. In the car, she said, I really wanted to help us. I know, he started the engine, but not like that, Mel. At home, they sat in the kitchen with tea. He placed the jar between them. Tell me, he said. All. Caitlin brought them in July, she began. She said that her friend got pregnant with them. I didn't believe it at first, but then I bought it. I started drinking after we received the tests. She didn't tell me. He looked at her. Why? I was afraid that you would say, stop trying. She looked away. Or that I'm crazy. You're not crazy, he took her hand. But it was stupid. I know, she nodded. Sorry. Emily Stone's office greeted them with the usual comfort, a sofa, armchairs, a light smell of lavender. Alex and Melanie walked in holding hands, but there was a slight awkwardness in their steps. This was their fourth session, Wednesday, October 23, 2019. A week had passed since the bottle of pills had fallen from Melanie's bag, and the tension between them had not gone away, even though they tried to talk at home. Emily was already sitting in a chair with a notepad and that same jar on the table. Her dark hair was pulled back into a bun, and her eyes sparkled with suppressed mirth. Hi, she smiled, pointing to the sofa. Sit down. I have news. News? Melanie sat up, glancing at the jar. About this? Yeah, Emily nodded, taking the jar in her hands. I checked the composition. Interesting thing. Alex sat down next to Melanie, crossing his arms. And what is there? He asked, looking at Emily. Is it safe? It's safe, Emily nodded, but her lips trembled. But not quite what you thought, Melanie. What do you mean, not that? Melanie frowned, her fingers tightening on the strap of her bag. Emily leaned back in her chair, holding the jar, and suddenly laughed quietly, but sincerely. This is not for pregnancy, she said, looking at them. This is to increase sexual appetite. Melanie froze, her face slowly turning red. Alex blinked, looking between Emily and his wife. What? He asked, his voice trembling with surprise. Are you kidding? No, Emily shook her head, still giggling. Ingredients, herbal mixture, some vitamins, nothing serious. But this is not about fertility, but about, let's say, increased desire. Melanie covered her face with her hands, her cheeks burning. Caitlin said they would help. She muttered through her fingers that her friend got pregnant with them. Maybe her friend was just having a good time, Emily shrugged, holding back another laugh. But this is not about children, Melanie. This is about something else. Alex leaned back on the couch, looking at his wife. 3 months, he said, shaking his head. Have you been drinking this for 3 months? Yes, she removed her hands from her face. Her voice was quiet, but anger flashed in it. I thought it worked. I felt more energetic. More energetic, Alex chuckled, but his gaze softened. Well, that explains a lot. What explains? She turned to him, still red. Your appetites are in Miami, he grinned. I thought that's how vacation works. Oh, shut up, she elbowed him, but the corners of her lips twitched. Emily watched them, placing the jar on the table. Let's be serious, she said, wiping away tears of laughter. Melanie, how did you take them? When? In the morning, before work, Melanie sighed, looking at her hands. Before work, Emily nodded, making a note. And how did you feel? Okay, she shrugged. more cheerful, more confident. And at work, Emily looked at her. With Jake, for example, Melanie blinked, then frowned. I don't know, she said. Maybe it was more fun. But this is work. Everyone there is like that. Alex tensed, looking at Emily. Wait, he said. Do you think this has something to do with Jake? Perhaps it was the pills that influenced her attraction to Jake. Emily shrugged. We'll look into this next time. But the fact is, these pills affect desire, not fertility. Melanie, you might feel differently, and it shows. It's noticeable, Alex nodded, looking at his wife. I told you, you're different from him. I didn't want to be different. Melanie raised her voice. I wanted a child, not this. I believe, he took her hand. But you acted very, very stupidly. Emily raised her hand to stop them. Don't quarrel, she said. This is not about betrayal, but about misunderstanding. Melanie, you trusted Caitlin. Alex, you've seen the changes. Now we know why. What's next? Throw away this rubbish. Melanie nodded, looking at the jar. And kill Caitlin. Don't rush into murder. Emily smiled. Talk to her. What about Alex? We'll talk. Melanie squeezed his hand. Is it true? True, he nodded. But no more experiments, Mel. The session ended on this note. They got out, and in the car Melanie said, I'm a fool. Not stupid, he started the engine. You're just doing rash things. I won't do it again, she snorted. Sexual appetite. Oh my God. He laughed, and so did she, relaxing for the first time in a week. The next session was in a week. Alex and Melanie were sitting on the couch in Emily's office again, but now there was less tension between them. The jar disappeared. Melanie threw it away at home, and Caitlin received an angry message from her. Do you even know what you gave me? The answer was vague. Oh, sorry, I thought it was the same thing. Emily came in with a notepad, her gaze serious but warm. Well, she said, sitting down, how's a week without miracle pills? Calm down, Melanie smiled, but briefly, I'm still angry with myself. No need, Emily shook her head. You have taken a step towards honesty. This is the main thing. Today, we'll look at how these pills affected you. On us, Alex raised an eyebrow. I didn't drink them. But you saw the effect, Emily nodded. Melanie, tell me how you behaved at work. With Jake, for example. Melanie sighed, looking at her hands. I was more active, she said. She was joking and laughing. Him too. We worked well together. And at home, Emily looked at her. I switched off at home, she shrugged. I was tired. Or I was thinking about something else. About what? Emily tilted her head. About children, Melanie glanced at Alec. About what doesn't work out. Alex nodded, squeezing her hand. I thought you were with Jake, he said. You shone there, but not at home. Now we know why everything is like this. Emily leaned back in her chair. These pills increased your desire, Melanie. You drank them in the morning, before work. The effect manifested itself where you spent the day in the office. Jake was nearby. It doesn't mean you wanted him. This means that you were open, alive. Conclusions, Alex chuckled. I almost divorced her because of this. Because you didn't know, Emily looked at him, but she didn't say anything. That's where the problem lies. I was afraid, Melanie turned to him. I thought you would judge. And I was afraid that you would leave, he nodded. And he was silent. Emily placed the notebook on the table, looking at them. Talk to each other. You are not telepaths, she said, her voice becoming firmer. Melanie, you hid the pills because you were afraid. Alex, you saw Jake, and you were silent because you were afraid. It's a vicious circle. If you had talked, we wouldn't have gotten to the divorce papers. You're right, Melanie nodded, looking at Alec. I should have said it. Me too, he squeezed her hand. But I didn't know how. Now you know, Emily smiled. This is not about Jake, not about betrayal. This is about you. You both want children. You are both afraid of failure. And instead of talking, you hide she is at work. You are in doubt. Melanie looked at her. Be honest, Emily shrugged. If something hurts, speak up. if something makes you happy too, and no natural pills without a doctor. I won't do it again, Melanie smiled faintly. I swear. Great, Emily wrote something down. Now about the children. Do you still want it? Yes, they answered in unison, looking at each other. Then go to the doctor together. Emily looked at them. Not Caitlin, not a friend, a real specialist, and talk to each other. Every step. The session ended on this note. They got out, and in the car Alex said, "She's right, we are not telepaths." Yeah, Melanie nodded. I should have told you about the pills. And I'm talking about my fears. He started the engine. Shall we do as she said? We'll do it, she smiled. And no Jake in our jokes. We agreed, he laughed, and they went home. The morning at the Carter house began with the usual chaos. The alarm went off at 6:30, but Alex was already in the kitchen, tinkering with the coffee maker. Melanie came down 10 minutes later, wearing his old t-shirt and her hair disheveled, rubbing her eyes. You got up before me again, she muttered, plopping down on a chair. This is not normal. Someone should make the coffee, he grinned, placing the mug in front of her. You look like a zombie. Thanks, honey, she rolled her eyes, taking a sip. You always know how to cheer up. It was Friday, November 15th, 2019. A month and a half had passed since their return from Miami, and life flowed in a new rhythm. Sessions with Emily Stone taught them to speak. It wasn't always easy, it wasn't always smooth, but they tried. Melanie stopped taking her miracle pills. Caitlin received a reprimand and a promise to never give advice again, and Jake remained just a colleague smart, but nothing more. Alex no longer followed, but asked. They went to the doctor again, and he confirmed, everything is fine, just relax and enjoy the process. And they relaxed. What time are you staying until today? Alex asked, cutting toast. Until 5, she yawned. A new project for a bar. And you? Until 6, he nodded. Drawings for a residential complex. Then home? Home, she smiled. Let's order pizza. No pineapples. Seriously? He raised an eyebrow. Who are you, and what did you do with my wife? Your wife is tired of pineapples. She poked him with a fork. I want pepperoni. Okay, pepperoni, he laughed. She slapped him on the hand, and the morning passed with its usual ease. They were separated on business, but there was something new in the air, hope that they did not discuss, but they both felt. After Emily, they became closer. Evenings on the veranda, long conversations, nights full of not only passion, but also warmth. Children were still a dream, but now without a hint of despair. The day passed slowly. Alex sat in the office, drawing lines on the screen, while Melanie, at her agency, argued with Jake about the color of the banner. Not red, she pointed at the model. Too aggressive. Come on, blue. Red is catchy, Jake shrugged. You are the boss, but I would leave it. Blue, she squinted, and don't argue. He laughed, raising his hands, and she smiled. Jake was no longer a threat, just a guy who did his job well. She caught herself thinking that she missed Alex and wrote to him, Pizza at 7, don't be late. I won't be late, he replied. Pepperoni is in. By 5 she finished, feeling slightly nauseous. Probably coffee on an empty stomach, she thought, but another thought flashed through her mind. The last time she checked the test. When? A month ago? She stopped at the pharmacy on the way home, bought a test just in case, and stuck it in her bag. At home, she threw her bag on the sofa and went to the bathroom without telling Alex. The box lay in my hands, and my heart began to pound. This is stupid, she told herself. I'll just check. She took the test, left it on the sink, and walked out, deciding not to look right away. But 3 minutes later, her legs carried her back on their own. She took the strip, and the world froze. 2 lines. Clear, bright, impossible. She blinked, shook the test as if it might lie, but the lines didn't disappear. Her throat constricted, and then a cry escaped. Yes, hell yes, Alex heard a scream. Chalk? He shouted, hearing her voice from the bathroom. What's happened? She jumped out, holding the test in her hand, her eyes sparkling with tears and insane joy. Look, She poked the strip in his face, her voice trembling. Look, Alex. He took the test, looking at the 2 lines. His brain shut down for a second, and then it dawned on him. This is... He looked up, his voice breaking. Yes, she laughed, rushing towards him. Yes, hell yes. He grabbed her, lifting her from the floor, and spun her around, laughing so loudly that the walls shook. Baby, we did it, he shouted, hugging her to him. We did it. She buried her head in his neck. Tears flowed down her cheeks, but they were tears of happiness. He lowered her to the floor, holding her by the shoulders, and looked into her eyes. Are you serious? He asked, still not believing. This is true? True, she nodded, wiping her face. I just checked. 2 lines, Alex. He hugged her again, so tightly that she squeaked. Baby, he said, kissing her forehead, cheeks, lips. You. God, Mel. Osh laughed, grabbing his shirt. This is our child. They collapsed on the couch, still holding the test like a trophy. Alex looked at the stripes, shaking his head. I thought this would never happen, he admitted, his voice softening. After everything. Me too, she pressed herself close to him. But we did it. He laughed, leaning back. Emily was right, he said. Relax, and everything will work out. I need to tell her, Melanie giggled. She will be shocked. Not shocked, he shook his head. She will say, I told you so. They sat hugging each other, and the silence was filled with their breathing. Then Melanie jumped up. We must celebrate, she announced. Pizza, wine. No, not wine. Juice. Juice and pepperoni. He nodded, standing up. It's coming. They ordered pizza, and while they waited, Melanie chatted incessantly. If it's a girl, let's call him Emma, she said, poking him in the side. Or Liam, if it's a boy. What if Bob? He grinned, and she slapped his arm. No beans, she laughed. It will be little Melanie or little Alex. The doorbell interrupted them, and Alex went to get pizza. They ate straight from the box, sitting on the floor, just like in the first days in their one-room apartment. Melanie took a bite and suddenly froze. What? He looked at her. Isn't it tasty? No, she shook her head, her eyes sparkling. I'm just happy. He put the pizza down, hugging her. Me too, Mel, he said quietly. You have no idea how. The night passed in their usual rhythm, but with a new light. They lay in bed and Melanie put his hand on her stomach. There's nothing there yet, he said, smiling. Yes, she nodded. Our baby. He kissed her and they fell asleep, hugging each other, like in their school days, when everything was just beginning. The rain pattered on the roof of their home in suburban Austin, a gentle April shower of 2025. Alex Carter, now slightly gray at the temples, closed the door to the children's room, turning off the night light. Inside, in 2 cribs, slept Emma and Liam, their 4-year-old twins born in July 2020. Emma was curled up, clutching her stuffed bunny, and Liam was spread out like a star, his mouth slightly open. Alex smiled, looking at them through the crack, and quietly walked into the living room. Melanie was sitting on the sofa, wearing a stretched t-shirt and shorts, holding a glass of water. Her brown hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there were shadows of fatigue under her eyes. She was 34, and her agency, Mel Carter Marketing, now had a branch in Dallas, but in recent years she had been learning to balance work and motherhood. The twins turned their lives upside down, but it was the chaos they had dreamed of. Are they sleeping? She asked without looking up from the phone. Like dead, Alex plopped down next to him, rubbing his neck. Liam kicked Emma again in her sleep, but she didn't even wake up. She's used to it, Melanie chuckled, putting the phone aside. He's like you, always on the move. And she's like you, he grinned, looking at her. Stubborn and with character. Thank you, honey, she poked him with her elbow, but smiled. You are a hero today. Putting them down is a feat. I'm a champion, he winked, moving closer. I deserve a reward. His hand slid to her waist, and he leaned down, kissing her neck. Melanie laughed, pulling away. Alex, I'm tired, she said, pushing him away. Those 2 little vampires sucked all my blood. Let's go to sleep. Sleep. He raised an eyebrow without removing his hand. Mel, they are sleeping. The house is quiet. Seriously, I'm like a squeezed lemon. He leaned back on the sofa, looking at her with feigned indignation. Is it that my wife has lost her appetite? He asked, crossing his arms. Should I call Caitlin? Ask if she still has those pills? Melanie froze, then laughed so loudly that she almost spilled water. Oh God, she breathed, wiping away tears. Can you forget about it? How to forget? He grinned, moving closer again. You were like a volcano in Miami. I could barely cope. It was 5 years ago. She pointed a finger at his chest. And then I didn't chase the twins all day. And I was chasing you. He grabbed her hand, kissing her fingers. Come on, Mel. Just once. She rolled her eyes, but her resistance weakened. His lips brushed over her wrist, and she sighed. You're unbearable, Carter, she said, but more softly. Okay, but quickly. Fast. He laughed, pulling her towards him. I am a champion, not a sprinter. Then I'll fall asleep right here, she giggled, falling onto him. They laughed until he rolled over, laying her down on the couch. Her t-shirt rode up and his hands slid down her sides. She looked at him, her tiredness replaced by a familiar glint in her eyes. You are still my weakness, he whispered, kissing her. And you are mine, she answered, hugging his neck. The rain intensified, muffling their breathing. They finished, breathing heavily, and Melanie buried her head in his shoulder. Are you satisfied? She asked, closing her eyes. Very, he kissed her forehead. You. Yeah, she smiled. But tomorrow you get up to see the children. We agreed, he laughed, hugging her tighter. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.